On page 6 is the income valuation workup. This property has 78 units or 78 suites. Has an average monthly rent per suite of $1,079.74, which is model driven. Vacancy loss of 2.6%, an expense ratio of 49.29%, giving it a net operating income of $499,169. Using an overall capitalization rate of 5.3%, the capitalized value is $9,418,283. On page 10 to page 12 is the 2017 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Everybody got any questions?
Just a few. The valuation for the property, this is all model driven, is it today?
That's correct.
Okay, so each of the parameters would be as decided by the model?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the 5.3% capitalization rate, is that largely driven by the age of the structure?
Age, location, and the size of the property.
Okay. Okay. Just with regard to the rent comparables that were used on page 5, then, if we could just have a quick look at those. So the subject property, the city's aware that it's a Manitoba housing property, correct?
Yes, as indicated in the first page.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So just looking at the 4 comparables here. The first one, 21 Antrim Road. This see that this this property has ensuite laundry in it. They were townhouses as well. They have air-conditioned units. Considerably more 3-bedroom units. Is that fair?
Considerably 3-bedroom units, I would say fair, but the other characteristics that were mentioned, I have no information on that one, Mr. Chair. I didn't inspect any of the comparables.
Okay. I see. So it's always hard to ask these questions, so I'll just do it as best I can here. The first property is managed by Crystal Properties. Second property is Sunrex managed property. It's a multi-story tower. It has been fully renovated, large suites. They have balconies. You can see the bedroom mix skews towards 1 and 2 bedrooms there. The third, I believe that one, actually yes, that one is on the river side as well, I believe, 1745. Yeah, they spoke about the views from that one. Comp number 3, Edison Properties managed. It's called Riverside Village Townhouses. They have an underground garage, indoor pool.
Are you asking questions on this, Turner? That should probably be in your presentation.
Well, I can't really present on material that I didn't include, I guess. But
well, you can because you can rebut it.
Fair enough.
That's a rebuttal.
Do it as a rebuttal. Don't
yeah.
do it as a...
It's always challenging to do.
Yes. We'll do it as a rebuttal to his...
That's fair.
Verbal rebuttal.
Yeah, we'll do a verbal rebuttal on his stuff after when you make your presentation.
All right.
State of the question for now.
Let's do it in that manner then. Looking at the capitalization rate, looking at page number 8. So the cap rate that's used for the subject property is 5.3%. I see that's within the 20th to 80th percentile.
Yes, that's correct.
Would that take into account any specific, the condition of the property, et cetera, or the model doesn't really, the model would not know condition of individual properties, right? It's essentially an averaging, is that correct?
Well, it is an averaging, however, if it falls in the range, whether it's on the lower or in the higher end, then there might be some consideration that were taken by the model. I'm just not sure, or I don't have the information which parameters or factors were considered by the model heavily or heavier than the others.
Okay. That's fair enough. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Ed, do you have any questions?
Have you inspected the site?
No, sir.
When was it last inspected?
Oh, I don't have that information. I don't. Yeah, I don't have that information.
Are you aware if there have been any improvements made to the property?
Basing it on effective year built compared to actual year built, I don't see any significant improvement or
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
How much of a review did you do on the other four, on the comps? Did you, when you're looking at the rents, I'm having a problem when it comes to these types of buildings. None of these would truly compare with this building, would they? Which one of those do you think would be the best comparison?
Well, the way I did choose the comparables is by way of units, number of units, the area, of course, is included in there, and effective year built. However, Comp 2 is 1994 compared to 1972. I'm sorry, and if it supports, well, not. The mix is kind of a tricky one. It's more on the total number of units, the area, and as much as possible effective year built. Those are the factors that I consider in choosing my comparables, sir. But without looking or physically checking out each one, including the subject property, I have no way to determine which one is the most comparable.
We'll go on to your presentation, Trevor.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're dealing with 355 Sutton Avenue. This is a Manitoba Housing owned and operated property. It is, of course, operated by Manitoba Housing to provide affordable housing to low-income families in Winnipeg, and it's operated on a rent geared to income basis. So the actual revenue that's generated from the property is based on the income level of the people that are in residence there. So the income that is produced is not representative of a market level income. So our task then is to determine what an appropriate market income and the other parameters to apply to the property would be. So on that basis, let's look at 355 Sutton. So it was originally built in 1972. It's located in the North Kildonan area there. We have our suite count showing on page number 3, 2 one-bedroom units, so very few one-beds, 56 two-bedroom units, and 23 bedroom units for a total of 78 units. The photographs of the property are shown on the next number of pages there. We have a couple of exteriors, just to give you the impression of the overall picture. It is a masonry construction. You can see the see the interior of the hallway. It's a somewhat institutional type of look. Very standard, basic finishes in the common areas, as well as in the units themselves. So always difficult to get good photos of these things, but predominantly the units have not been renovated since the date of construction, that being 1972. So if you look at the flooring tile there, you can see that it's of its vintage. As well as in the kitchen, the cabinetry dates back to that time frame as well. Obviously, stoves get replaced here and there when needed. But overall, the condition of the units would be considered to be poor to below average generally, with relation to the age of the finishes, as well as the wear and tear that they go through. Manitoba housing properties typically tend to have a higher incidence of damage and breakage, etc., just given some of the issues that socioeconomic issues that are present in some of the residents in these facilities. So the wear and tear tends to be on the higher side. So in the case of the subject property, it is largely original. They have had bed bug issues in this facility. Obviously, over time, they do treat them as it goes forward. There has also been recent water penetration, as you can see on page number 8 in the roof there. So overall, the condition of the property is poor to below average would be my presentation to you. The site is shown on page number 10. You can see where the parking is located. It's at the corner of Sutton and Rothesay. And the property location itself, if you look at the aerial on page number 11, it's in that north end of North Kildonan, right around River East Collegiate. Right in that ring around River East Collegiate, there is a high prevalence of Manitoba housing facilities in that particular region. So it is, it's not a strong rental community in terms of generating average or above average rental rates. I will point you to my page number 10. Again, if you look directly across Rothesay Street, you have 1395 Rothesay Street there. I have represented this property in the last cycle, and I have further evidence with regard to that in relation to the subject property. It has very similar condition in terms of the age and condition of the units themselves, and a similar age and suite count as well. So will be presenting material with regard to that property in our evaluation. So moving on to the value itself, page number 13, again, it's rent geared to income. The actual revenue generated is dependent on the income of the residents, so we are not able to rely on that in order to determine rent. So we've gone to the market and looked for rental comparables to compare to the property. Now, generally speaking, all of these rental comparables that we show on page number 13 and 14 are going to be in better condition generally than the subject property. So they're somewhat misleading in terms of what rent would be achieved on the subject. If you look at my page number 14, as mentioned, directly kitty corner to the subject property, we have 1395 Rothesay. Built in 1970, 3-story walk-up, concrete masonry, 42 units, 1 and 2 bedrooms, and as mentioned, that's in a very similar condition with regard to the finishes and the upkeep of it. It's in a poor state of repair. The one-bedroom rents in that property range between $642 to $725 for an average of $671. Two bedrooms between $720 and $770 for a $755 average. Given the location, the age, the condition of it, this is a very strong comparable for the subject property. So we have put a lot of weight on the rents that they're able to achieve there, and we've applied the average rents for the one and the two bedrooms for that property to the subject property. And we've then applied a rental rate of $900 towards the bottom end of three-bedroom rents to the three bedrooms in the subject property. So if you look on page 14, that's summarized, and it gives us our gross rent of $739,464. To this, we've added the laundry revenue as well as the parking revenue for the subject property. Moving on to page number 15, we are in agreement with the 2.6% vacancy rate of the city. And at the bottom of page number 15, we go through the expense allowance for the subject. Now, what we have done is look at a 3-year history of the expenses for the subject and stabilize those for the valuation date in 2018. So the chart presents that summary. We've made adjustments where needed. Typically, we're looking at 3-year averages. Obviously, the actual property taxes are utilized, and we've added a small amount for professional fees, which they never include in the statements for Manitoba Housing, or property management, which we've used the standard 5% of effective gross income. So if you do that analysis, it comes down to amount of $461,831. This gives you an expense ratio of 63.2%, or a little over $5,900 per unit. What I've done further beyond that is compare this again to the 1395 Rothesay property directly across the street. They have an amount per unit of $5,573 per unit. Very similar limited expenditure on repairs and maintenance in that facility. So in the interest of fairness for the market valuation, we've assigned a lower value of that, that cost per unit. And this gives us a lowered expense allowance of $434,694, which we've used in our value. This is summarized on page number 16 and brings you down to a net operating income of $296,027. Moving beyond that to page number 17 and the capitalization rate. I'll just quickly run through this. Again, we're looking at not a standard market apartment. We're looking at a...
Okay. Call you back in the next one.
I apologize, but I was here yesterday, but I didn't have it down today.
No problem, Robert.
Page number 17, we'll move on to the capitalization rate. Again, it's a Manitoba housing facility, so we're looking at a social housing property and all of the issues that go along with that. Pardon me. If I can direct you to my page number 17, we are looking at a number of issues regarding this. Social affordable housing properties cannot legitimately be directly compared to standard market apartment transactions, as social housing properties have considerable restrictions and burdens that are not present for market apartments. These include rental income restrictions, rental market restrictions, that being a smaller pool of potential tenants, generally additional operating expenses, Generally, physical condition tends to be in lower condition than the average market apartment. And finally, and quite crucially, disposition restrictions at the time of sale, as well as other factors which can negatively impact market value. You've probably heard this before, but I'll quickly run through it. Mr. Richard Polton, an accredited appraiser in the United States, has a book entitled Valuation and Market Studies for Affordable Housing. He's kind of a recognized expert in this area. He states, developing a market-derived cap rate for an income-restricted property begins with an analysis of the available rates for similar unrestricted properties. Then these rates are adjusted based on the risk factors that an investor would consider in developing a cap rate. The result is a cap rate based on market factors and associated risks. In the final analysis, property tax assessment must take into account the public purpose of the project, the overall benefits and burdens, and the restricted nature of the operating rents. So, as stated, our task then is to look at what do standard market apartments trade for on the market and what premium should be applied to that in arriving at a fair market cap rate. So, looking at the subject property, it is a Manitoba housing property. They generally do not sell. If they do sell, they're generally not going to be in good condition. They also come along with the residents that are in place at the time of sale under the specific terms that they're under according to Residential Tenancies Branch. So you're not immediately going to be able to generate a higher income out of property such as this if you purchase it at the valuation date. Looking at cap rate overall, City of Winnipeg has a cap rate range of 4% up to a high of 7.3%. Subject property is in poor condition as noted and would generally not be considered an investment grade property by any astute investor. Looking at our cap rate chart, we have a range of roughly 5.44%, that being the 333 Ward purchase, that being most recently built large-scale investment-grade property trading in 2016 at 5.44%, running up to, and I see it's not on this particular chart, running up to a cap of 6.65%. You can see a couple of others there. The caps that we're presenting here are properties that are not purchased for renovation and reposition in the market, where you can increase the return to the new owner. They're bought basically fully renovated and producing their maximum income at the time of sale. So there is no additional upside for which a premium would be paid for these properties, which would then drive a lower cap rate. So our cap rates are shown there. The market studies by the main commercial brokerages that publish reports, that being Colliers and CBRE, you can see that cap rates have generally remained stable between 2016 and 2018. Colliers is stating low-rise apartments, average cap rates for investment-grade properties between 5.25% and 6% in 2016, and 5% to 6% in 2018. CB Richard Ellis, very similar. They have cap rate range for low-rise between 5.5% and 6%, and 5.5% and 6% in 2018 as well. At the bottom of page 19, there's a graph that gives you a good indicator of the stable nature of apartment cap rates in Winnipeg, as published by CB Richard Ellis. Pardon me. Looking at the subject property, we've applied a cap rate of 6%. Again, we're looking at a low end of 5.5% roughly, as shown in the market for 333 Ward, as representative of the best class of investment grade property to this. You now have a property that's encumbered by existing tenants going forward at a low income. You have the condition of the property. You have an area that's not going to drive considerably higher rents. There's a number of risk factors here that any astute investor would apply a premium to. So we've applied a cap rate of 6% to the subject property. And on page number 20, this is summarized in comparison to the city's valuation. It gives us a final market value of $4,934,000. In the addenda, I've included, of course, the income and expense as submitted by the ownership, the cap rate reports from Colliers and C.B. Richard Ellis. We have a number of decisions that I've included as well. I would point you towards the first couple, which are decisions on strong investment grade properties at a 5.5% capitalization rate. That being, say, Summerland Apartments at 77 University Crescent. There's a number in that 1750 Pembina Highway, a number in that Fort Garry area. I would ask you to skip over the Burroughs, Gilbert, and Magnus properties. Those are agreements. And at the very back, I've included the decision and the information regarding 1395 Rothesay, the property that we were discussing that's kitty corner to the subject. The decision was based on net operating income of the property itself, as presented by me in the last cycle, as well as a cap rate of 5.75%. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can we take a 2-minute break?
Certainly.
Please, I just don't have to kick in.
My final comments would just be regarding the rental comparables from the city. I won't go into them in detail, but they're two of them are located riverside with balconies, upgraded underground parking. Rothesay has indoor pool, underground parking, etc. The significant renovation. I won't go through them in detail, but I don't consider them to be comparable.
Ryan, any questions?
Just a couple. On page 17, this is the capitalization rate study.
Yes.
The overall capitalization rates for all the sales were all derived from what kind of income, net operating income? Are they actuals? Are they just? I don't see any net operating income in the chart.
Right.
So just wanted to clarify if they are based on actuals or projections.
No, they are based on the actual net operating incomes of the properties themselves.
And the sale number 1 ward, that's typical, or no, that's not a typical walk-up apartment block, right? They are more of, what do you call this, townhouse type, is that correct?
No, it's a wood frame, I think it's a 4-story wood frame building located in South St. Patel.
I guess
recent
I'm
construction.
thinking of a different one, sorry. Yeah, that's a different one, I'm sorry. Sales 2, 3, and 4, their age is way older than the subject property, is that correct?
They are older, yes. The difference being that these had undergone renovation prior to sale. So while they were originally constructed in those dates, it's not representative of how the city would do an effective age.
Prior to sale, meaning prior to the sale dates indicated on the
Correct.
sale date column. So the income may have been higher than was
No.
used?
The sales, so the properties were renovated prior to sale, so their income would already have been increased to represent the renovated suites.
Okay. That's my questions. I think, in general, just clarification, Mr. Chair, if I may. For affordable housing or Manitoba housing in general, do they have a mortgage of some sort? Or do they own the property without any mortgages or anything like that?
Manitoba Housing would typically, they outright own their properties. There may be select properties where they own them in tandem with an organization where there may be a mortgage involved, but straight up owned Manitoba Housing properties, they typically do not have a mortgage in place.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Ed?
Land to plan area is 3.59. That's a decent ratio.
Yes, when it comes to apartments, it's more, so the land to plan is, I guess, representative of the green space and the parking. It's really the parking that you're looking for.
The other question I have is your 1395 Rothesay. Am I clear that that is not social housing?
It is not. No, it's a market apartment.
Thank you.
On your page 17, I'm not sure if Ryan asked on 403 St. Anne's Road. Did you talk about that one?
No, I just spoke in general of the age category.
Yeah. 403 St. Anne's Road. What type of building was that one again?
That was a market apartment as well.
3 floors?
Generally, these were walk-ups, yes. Now, 403 St. Anne's, that I believe was a 2.5 or 3-story walk-up, yes.
And it was renovated prior to the sale?
That was our information when we did the research on it.
And it came in at 5.6 on the overall rate for the cap rate.
Correct.
What would the cap rate have done since then?
Since that time frame, well, it would depend on the obviously the revenue generated, whether it has accelerated, if they've made any further improvements to the building. I'm not sure of any further changes since that time.
But we're dealing with April 1st, 2018 on this, correct?
We are, yes.
So between 2015, when that cap rate was established, how much would that cap rate have changed between then and April 1st, 2018?
I would say generally we are seeing a leveling of capitalization rates in recent years, as supported by the Colliers and CBRE studies, kind of indicating a flat line as far as apartment cap rates go. So I don't think we would have seen a change in the cap. We may have seen an increase in income and greater sale value, but the cap would have remained at the same level.
So now you were talking about expenses, and you brought them down to what percentage?
Well, the percentage, and I don't go based on the percentage, but the percentage worked out to 59.49%.
Yeah.
The actual expenses were slightly higher than that. What I did is I was putting some weight on the neighboring property there with regard to the rents as I looked at what their expenses were as well. And I made an adjustment downwards to kind of bring it in line with that particular property.
As far as revenues go then, are there any revenues that come from the province on the subsidization of the apartments?
From the province itself,
Yeah.
the income and expense form is provided at the back of our brief as well as the city's brief, and there's no additional, no particular additional funding from the province. If there's a shortfall at the end of the year, Manitoba Housing will pick it up, but again, it's operated on a rent geared to income basis, so there typically will be shortfalls.
Any capital expenditures will be picked up by the province then?
Correct.
Why do we have zeros under things like painting, janitorial, appliance repairs? They do replace some appliances. Why is there not a number in
And
there?
they do. They certainly do all of those things that are listed there: electrical, heating, painting, etc. All the standard things. Their accounting system does not break it out in that line-by-line fashion, unfortunately. It lumps it into a single sum, so we don't, unfortunately, get to see the individual expense lines.
So there's no telling if some of what they did would have been capital, or is this all stuff that would have been done by the janitor?
This, the expenses on here, and I have asked this question, are your standard repair and maintenance items, not capital expenditures. And we do actually look at them as well in terms of the overall value to see if it's well out of line, and if it is, then we make an adjustment. As we have in this case, just to bring it in line with the neighboring property.
Now, these are expenses. No snow clearing? This is Manitoba.
Right. So it does snow in Winnipeg, so
Yeah.
I'm assuming they do actually move that snow, but it doesn't break it out, unfortunately. I wish it did.
Is that contract not picked up by Manitoba Housing?
Well, Manitoba Housing does pay all of the expenses for the subject property, yes.
Yeah.
So,
So they do pay the
I'm
expense.
sure that value is there internally, but they do not break it down in that fashion, unfortunately. It's a large government entity. I'm a small consultant to them. I don't get to give them instructions as to the best suit our needs, unfortunately.
But what expenses do they pick up? Because you're saying that you're looking at 60% here basically in expenses. Out of that 60%, some of that's picked up by the province.
Well, it's all picked up by Manitoba Housing.
Yeah.
It's a Manitoba Housing owned property, so all expenses for the property are paid by Manitoba Housing.
Anything in summation?
Well, thank you.
Our friend Linda, Robert. You just missed it. Welcome again, Robert.
Thank you. I can't believe it.
I always say not the first time, it won't be the last time.
Well, I don't know how I did that.
Oh, it's easy, believe me.
And the visa said, what are you doing? I said, I'm having coffee. And she said, you're supposed to be here. Ooh.
Oops.
I was here yesterday and I did not have it on the schedule to be here today, so I apologize. Deeply apologize. Sorry.
Accepted.
Thank you.
Not that I've never missed a meeting. We're going to move on to 1183 Henderson Highway. We now have Robert joining us. When are you ready, Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 19-1968. It has a roll number of 040000855500. It is located at 1183 Henderson Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020 using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The property is assessed at $1,113,000. Has one building, 2 stories, actual year built of 1971, a zoning of residential multifamily, a land area of 9,725 square feet, a planned area of 3,600 square feet, and a gross floor area of 10,800 square feet. Page 3, there are 2 aerial photos of the subject property. Page 4 are maps. The first one is the map of the subject property, and the second one is the map of the comparable rents. On page 5 are the comparable rents. They are all ranging from $809 up to $967 average monthly rent per unit. On page 6 is the income valuation. The subject property has 12 suites with a monthly rent per suite of $798.28 or $798.28, which is model driven. Has a vacancy loss of 2.6%, expense ratio of 49.29%, giving it a net operating income of $56,776. With an overall capitalization rate of 5.1%, the capitalized value is $1,113,255. On page 10, page 14 is the income and expense information for the subject properties. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Questions?
Just in general, the remainder of the properties on today's docket, given workload, you probably didn't have time to have a look at them, I imagine.
I wasn't able to, no.
Fair enough. Then the valuation on this property is model driven in all its parts again?
That's correct.
Okay. Just one quick question then. The prior property was built in 1972 and had very few 1 beds, a lot of 2 beds, and some 3 bedrooms. So, and it had a cap rate of 5.3%. This property was built in 71, similar condition, 1 and 2 beds, and it has a cap rate of 5.1. So the cap rate has gone. I'm just not sure where the.
Well, just based on my observation, without really an information of how the model derived the 5.10%, based on just observing the 2, looks like suite count affected the cap rate as well, or the size of the the property in general.
Okay,
And this
I
one
see.
is being smaller and the other one's being bigger.
fair enough. Those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, any questions?
No idea.
Ed?
The owner is a numbered company, so this is not circle zoning.
No, I believe.
No.
Thank you, sir.
In terms of the comps, is there any one that stands out for you more than the others in terms of being comparable?
That's a good question. They're all located in almost the same area except for Comp 3, which is a bit far. If we look at the map on page 4, so I would say more Comp 4 because of the mix. 1961, it's a bit older compared to the subject property. Average gross area per unit, it's 100 square feet difference. So yeah, Comp 4 would be closer to the subject property.
Thank you, that's all of my questions.
Thank you, sir.
On with your presentation, sir.
Okay, thank you. So 1183 Henderson Highway, this is a private apartment building, market apartments. If you look at my page 2, or rather page number 1 and the chart on there, you can see that we had it under appeal in the 2018 cycle, and it was reduced slightly. We have appealed that decision to the municipal board, and we're awaiting scheduling for that. So, subject property built in 1971, a total of 12 units, 6 one-beds, 6 two-beds. The property, this particular property, again, is in very original condition to 1971. There have been obviously replacements of things that have been damaged, but by and large the units themselves are reflective of finishes of that time frame, as well as the structure itself. So if we have a look at the photos on pages 2 through 5, or rather 2 through 6, you can see the exterior as well as the interior. The window units in the suites themselves have been replaced. They were replaced actually prior to the last appeal. The exception to that being the ones in the hallways. You can see at the bottom of page 3 you have the aluminum sliders, and the photographs there indicate the moisture buildup that is common to those. It's a standard masonry construction. If you look at page number 5, you get a good indication of what the kitchens look like. So very indicative of 1971, haven't been upgraded since that time. We even have one of those lovely avocado stoves in that particular picture with the new fridge beside it, as the fridge gave out after a certain point, I'm sure. Original cabinetry, and by and large the same in the bathrooms as well. Very original flooring as well. If you look at the bottom of page 6, that's very standard throughout the building. It has been replaced where absolutely needed, but generally the property is very original and would be considered in below average condition. Moving forward, the site description is shown on page number 8 with the parking at the rear. Generally their parking isn't entirely full, but we do attribute parking revenue to the property. The actual location is shown on page number 9 on North Henderson Highway, heading halfway to Chief Peguis Trail there. Moving on to the valuation itself. The rents in place are indicative of what the property is able to achieve on the marketplace. They do increase the rents according to RTV on a yearly basis, so they do get their annual increase, but it is representative of what they can achieve on the marketplace. So page number 11 gives you the rental rate spread for the property, $583 to $800 for the one beds, and $800 to $878 for the two beds. We then present our rental rate comps underneath this. We try and keep them in the same area, size, structure, etc. You can see that the subject does fall within that range for the most part. There are some units that are on the lower end of the range, but they're reflective of what the property itself is. So keep in mind, if one were to buy this property as of the valuation date, the income in place is what you would receive, not a speculative income that you would be able to achieve on the market. The rents in place are the rents that you would get. So the annual rental income comes to $112,152. Please excuse the potential annual rental income. That's a typo. It's $112,152. To this, we've added an estimated laundry revenue of $1,440, as there is laundry in the facility, and a parking revenue of $3,960. Now, it's not likely that they're going to get all of that parking revenue, but in fairness, we have attributed parking revenue to the property. We use a 2.6% vacancy on the expense side, in keeping with the city and in keeping with CMHC. Bottom of page number 13, you can see our 3-year summary of expenses for the subject property, and we've gone through these and stabilized them for the sale date. So by and large, again, we're looking at 3-year averages where it makes sense. We've made an estimate for waste and snow removal for the subject. There's a number of points, as you can see, where they have zero expenditures, that being office supplies, marketing, security, waste and snow removal. They had zero as well. Obviously that we have made an allowance for. Wages and benefits, they also have zero, as well as any sundry items, they have zero as well. So our amount of $66,432, well, we've increased it to take into account a standard property management fee, is probably on the low side, given that there are expenditures that are not accounted for by the ownership. Page number 14 summarizes this. In tandem with the city, our income levels are relatively similar, same vacancy rate, and obviously the expenditures for the property are slightly higher. You're going to have higher expenditures in an older building such as this, typically in its state. So the NOI comes to $48,064. Moving on to capitalization rate, I won't go through our chart again. For the market participants cap rate studies, what I will point out again is we're seeing kind of a baseline of 5.5% for investment grade properties at the better end of the market, more recent construction, etc. Our cap rate range is roughly 5.4 to 6.5%. Subject property itself is in below average condition, below average rent, etc. We've attributed a slight premium to that, and we've used a cap rate of 5.75% in our valuation. And this gives us final market value of $836,000. And the addenda of the brief, again, We'll give you a couple of decisions from the 2020 cycle on higher-end investment-grade properties where cap rates were decided at 5.5% for properties in South Fort Garry, Markham, Pembina Highway, and University Crescent. And that is my presentation.
Any questions?
Yes, on page 12, just want to clarify, is there really a mix of market rent rates and the actual parking and laundry?
No, it's not actually. The rent that I come to there, the 112, 152 is purely rent. And as it's not accounted for in the I&E, we made estimates of what the laundry and parking revenue would be for the facility and included those in our valuation.
So the potential annual rental income of 112,152 is not the actual.
It is the actual. That's the actual 100% occupied rent, to which we then added estimated laundry and parking. And again, they're not going to achieve the full parking that I attribute to it. Generally, they're not, all their stalls are not occupied.
And was there any vacancy on this one with that $112 and 152 yearly?
In the I&E, it did not at that particular point in time indicate a vacancy, but as with any property on the marketplace, it does experience vacancy on turnover, etc. So to achieve a 2.6% vacancy would be it would be very, very quick. It would be a portion of a month for one unit likely over the course of the year.
And just on page 13 is based on actual and estimates for the expenses, correct?
It is, yes. So the estimates, again, obviously you have to account for property management. We use the standard 5% of the EGI. And the only other addition we made was for waste and snow removal, to which we added a $500 amount.
I think that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Ed?
No questions, thank you.
Robert?
Just on a little clarification with myself, on page 12 of your report.
Yeah.
You have the 112,152 for rent, and then I was just wondering what the potential annual rental income on
Yes.
one means.
Please disregard the typo that was not corrected prior to printing. It is 112, 152.
So it should be that instead of
It
101.
should, correct.
Okay. Because I was wondering where that came from.
Yes.
Thank you.
On their sheets that they supplied, they showed an NOI of 50,000 and change, didn't it? Not that I can see it right now,
So which
On the
Just,
the papers that
come
they,
to it here.
sheets that they filled out,
Yes, they do.
is there an error?
No, there's no error in there, but again, they're looking at the 2017 year here, so again, their income is ever so slightly lower than what I've projected, but they're not accounting for property management standard in all apartments, or waste and snow removal, or a number of other categories that are pretty standard, as I've shown on page number 13 there. The line items that I included are just the standard ones that the city has in their form that they had not indicated they hadn't filled out, rather. So there's additional expenses that don't appear to be showing up on what they've submitted.
They own a number of properties
They
in the
have,
area.
They have two properties, as it turns out. This one and one on Edison, I believe it is.
Could they be putting the snow onto the other property?
No, as I represent that one too, and it also did not have snow removal on it.
And the management that you're talking about, are you splitting it between the two properties, or what are you doing there?
No, I've attributed 5% of the effective gross income, as is standard in the marketplace for property management. So it's nothing to do with the other property that they own. As is normal, I mean, a property. You look at a property management company that manages a bunch of them, it'll be property specific what the expenses are for that.
So they're not recouping it on the rents, then, is what you're saying?
They are a small investor and not charging out a property management fee specifically themselves, whereas in a normal market situation, there would be a property management fee attributed to a market apartment.
What is the interest that they're putting in there? That's $7,600.
The income and expense, let me just flip to it here. Is it this one? That's that may be their to do with their mortgage. It doesn't specifically indicate what it is. They have owned this property for some time. I do know that.
So you've got their expenses up at $66,000. They were showing their expenses at $61,000. Is that just management? That's more than 5%.
The management, and let's look at that. So going to my page number 13. Page number 13 or 14. So our PGI for the property is 114,496 times 0.05 gives us $5,725, which is the property management fee that I assigned to it.
5,725.
That's correct. So again, that would be a standard expense that the vast majority of apartment owners would have in the marketplace. They simply aren't attributing it in their case.
So you're saying that it usually does show up, but in this, does the city put it on theirs?
The city does include a management, recognize a management fee, I believe, in their
Where do they put it in their
expenses.
sheets? I don't see it in there.
Well, perhaps Mr. Valderrama might be able to better speak to.
It was just on his page. On his page 7, it says the estimated potential rent is net of all expenses to the owner, including the cost of management.
Okay, which page are we at?
His page 7.
Okay, so I'm now speaking about information that I didn't submit. But,
It was submitted, and
the
I asked you a question about this issue.
fair enough. So the rent that is attributed by the city is, pardon me. This is interesting. It almost seems to be a carryover from other categories of properties, such as office industrial.
I've never seen this on the sheet before, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah,
Very
Mr.
clearly.
Chair,
Very-
that blurb right there underneath is a generic template. For apartments, the potential rent is usually gross.
Yeah.
I think very clearly, if you look at the valuation, obviously there are expenses that are deducted from that rent, so it's very,
But do you see where I was confused with this statement that was on the sheet?
I do indeed.
Yes, it is a generic it's a template that.
So it shouldn't be there.
For apartment, as I mentioned, potential rent should be gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, let's not shut up on that one.
I'm trying to,
Address that later. Did I answer that
so you're saying
to your?
specifically he didn't do it, but others do include it in their cost?
Dominantly, you will see a property management expense included in expenses as submitted to the city, and that's pretty much across the board in the marketplace, unless you're a very small owner.
Is that correct, Ryan? And you guys accept that?
We are in a different direction in terms of the other property types, Mr. Chair. Cannot speak to any evidence or anything with regard to the management fees, but I think this reassessment year, I think it's being debated and argued on both sides.
Oh, is this part of that 5 and 7% thing? that we're-
No.
This isn't
But
that at
for
all.
apartment,
No.
I believe it doesn't affect us.
No.
No, but
So-
it's for the other property types.
So there would be a property management expense included typically in the city's overall expense allowance, right?
For
In that-
apartment,
For apartments, yes.
the expense ratio captures that.
Would capture that, right, yes.
Because our starting potential rent is gross. That's as far as I know for apartment. I may be corrected, but I think that's what I know.
And your expense ratio that you used on yours, again, is part of the MO, at
Yes, it is.
49.29.
It is, sir.
You're using numbers that you stabilized.
That's correct.
Against U66, by adding on the snow and by adding on the property management.
Right, we added on a nominal amount for snow and trash removal, $500, and then just a standard management fee. So the actual expenses for the property are higher than the city's projected expense allowance. And there is obviously variability in the marketplace. Property is older and can experience higher costs.
But now, if you look at his 2015 expenditures, he had for repairs and maintenance, 21,000, and the next year was 19,000, and 16, but 17 dropped down to 11. So you're stabilizing that over the 3 years.
Correct.
Was there a more major work required to get it to this point, or is it stabilized now that it's going to be?
As in, would it be 11,000 or 12,000?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe it was any extraordinary amount in those 2 years. It's just a variation in what the expenses
They
were.
didn't slip any capital in there or anything?
No.
Okay, I'm done. Anything with summation?
No, sir. Thank you.
Sure. We're going to take a small recess at this moment. Call the meeting back to order. 441 Edison Avenue. Ryan, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 19-1969. It has a roll number of 0400343000. It is located at 441 Edison Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020 using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The assessed value for the property is $6,581,000. That's one building and 2 stories. An actual year built of 1968. Has an effective year built of 1988. Has a zoning of residential multifamily. The land area for the subject property is 36,559 square feet, a planned area of 13,689 square feet, and a gross floor area of 40,761 square feet. On page 3 are aerial photos of the subject property. It's the one with the hand and the one with the arrow, 441, with the 441 marker. On page 4 are maps of the subject property and the comparable rights. On page 5 are the rent comparables. They're all ranging from $1,014 up to $1,434 average monthly rent per unit. On page 6 is the income valuation workup. The subject property has 47 suites with an average monthly rent per suite of $1,036.91, which is model-driven rent. It has a vacancy loss of 2.6%, an expense ratio of 42.23%, and an overall capitalization rate of 5%, giving it a capitalized value of $6,581,300. On page 10 to page 12 is where the 2017 income and expense information attached. That's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Question, Trev?
Yes, just the effective age of 1988. Do we know what? So it's originally built in '68. Do you know what has gone into bumping the age to 1988 for effective year?
I wasn't able to look into that. Based on the 1988, it would probably be renovation, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay. Most recent sale price in 2011 was $2,750,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And valuation here again is model driven.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Those are all of my questions.
Ed?
No question, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rob?
Nothing right now, thank you.
Sir.
Let's go back to the sale, January 7th, 2011, $2,750,000 was a sworn value. We don't know what other properties were involved in that sale, do we?
I wasn't able to check between the two parties involved in this sale, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure what happened, or who are the parties involved.
Okay. And again, on this one, you've got that same statement with the little asterisk saying the estimated potential rent,
Yes.
all expenses
That's correct.
to the owner. That comes off of there, is that what you're saying?
It's a template that's attached that to it.
Okay. On to yours, Trent.
Okay. Just start, I guess, verbal rebuttal, looking at the rental comparables for the subject as presented by the city on page 5. So, comparable number 1, 1865 Gateway, built in 2010. This is a life lease facility located on Gateway. As is comparable number 4, which we'll deal with a bit later. Built in 2004. This is also a life lease facility, and you can see the suite sizes are, of course, significantly greater. Comp number 2, this 150 Abaco Drive. This is Concordia Patio Estates, newly renovated. They have, as they term it, new designer kitchens and bathrooms, new hardwoods, new windows and blinds, etc. And comparable number 3, it also indicated that 30 Donwood Drive, that these are renovated with new bathrooms, kitchen, flooring, and appliances for that property. So the comps would be of a higher scale than the subject property, certainly, and would drive a higher rent. I can answer any questions that you might have on that rebuttal, or that the city may have.
Do you have anything on that rebuttal that he did on your?
No, I don't have any
No?
questions.
No, continue on.
Okay. All right, so 441 Edison Avenue, this is a market apartment, not social housing or Manitoba housing. Built in 1968. There had been some updating since that time frame, but not really recently. The suite count is broken out on page number 3. We have 28 one-bedroom units and 19 two-bedroom units. This is kind of the inverse of what you typically see, where there's more two-bedrooms versus one-bedrooms. The property itself, shown on pages 4 through 8, you can see the photographs, some of the exterior. They were having some spalling issues on the exterior of the building. Some of this was related to water penetration that they were getting through the roof, which has subsequently been repaired at a cost to the owner. You can see the interior hallways, the kitchens, the bathrooms, and kind of the standard finishes of the units themselves. I've also given you some indication of the water issue that they were facing in some of the units on the upper floor. That has since been resolved. The description of it is on page number 9, and we would consider it to be an average condition in the marketplace. So the site is shown on page number 10. As you can see, it's a long, narrow site. Access to the parking is via the laneway at the rear, not off of the front of the building. It's located on Edison. Edison has a significant number of apartment buildings along it, both older and some newer. Immediately adjacent to the east, you have new apartment development that has gone up, which now has 3 buildings on site. Much more attractive in the marketplace, and obviously drawing higher rents, but that also has a kick-on effect of the ability to rent other units in the marketplace if they're not comparable. We have found on Edison that, in particular, given the, I'll say that it's either overbuilt or on the edge of being overbuilt in terms of older units, that there's very often the requirement to offer incentives to renters on the marketplace, which drives down market rents in that particular area. So, keeping that in mind, let's move on to the valuation itself. Page number 13, we've indicated the rents that are being achieved for the subject property. As you can see, 1 beds range from $875 to $888, and 2 beds from $975 to $990 at the market at the valuation date of April 1, 2018. And that is with the kitchens and the bathrooms in relatively good condition of slightly recent renovation. So market comps are shown below that on page number 13 and 14. These are comparables in that Edison area. You can see the predominance of the vintage of the subject property, and slightly newer, slightly older. The rents are certainly supported by the comparables as we show them on those pages. So we believe that the in-place rental rates are reflective of market. This gives us a gross potential rent of $515,447. And again, it's important to consider, if you take this property to market on the evaluation date, those are the rents in place. That's what you're going to be purchasing. You're not getting a potential rent based on what the market may or may not support. You're getting what's in place at the time of purchase. So, moving on, we have also included parking revenue of $16,700 as well as laundry revenue in our valuation. On the expense side, page number 16, we use the 2.6% vacancy rate as supported by CMHC at 2.5%. Our expense history is shown on page number 16. We have 2 years that we have stabilized for the valuation date of 2018. As you can see, it comes to a stabilized amount of $207,556, which again is under the expense allowance as allowed by the city. So, taking this into account, we come to a final NOI of $318,551 based on the actual operation of the building. Our commentary regarding capitalization rates again holds true. We see recently built property in a very good area of South St. Patel transacting at a 5.44% cap rate, essentially representing the top end of the market. The subject itself is certainly an average apartment. It would not achieve better than that particular sale comp. And again, the market participants are indicating that that capitalization rates are flat line between 2016 and 2018, with CBRE indicating low rises ranging between 5.5 and 6%. We've applied a cap rate of 5.5% to the subject, and this gives us our final market value of $5,792,000. And again, the addenda are the same as before. Happy to answer any questions.
Ryan?
Just, where's that? So the, on the income statement, so the actual revenue that was used in calculating the value that you wanted and the actual on the income statement, are they right?
They are slightly different, and I will point you to that income statement. The easiest way to find it is on page 11 of the city's brief. It's in mine, but it's easier to find here. So if you look at the fourth column there, year to date, that is 12 months ending as of December 31, 2017. So the fourth column is the actual. So you have residential rent of, I think it says $516 or $18,095. Then they have vacancy below that, but below that you have residential discount, which is what I was referring to in that particular area. You have a discount of $7,345, which would bring you down to roughly $510,000, $511,000, which would be below the rental income that I've attributed to the property at a full 100% leased capacity. And that's based on the actual rents as of the valuation date. So they do have to offer discounts in this area.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Rob? No question. Ed?
No questions, thank
I was trying to follow you on that, and I guess I missed something.
Okay.
If the total revenue is 525, then you add something.
So if you look at that same column
Yeah?
at the top,
Yes, that's at 518,000?
Yeah, so that's your residential rent.
Yeah.
Then they have, so their accounting is slightly different than what the model or I do, but you then have vacancy of 14,000, which is the vacancy that they experienced that year. But below that, they have residential discount, which is the discounted rent. So take that off of the residential rent, and you would come to somewhere in the 510,000 plus range for rent, right? So the rent amount is roughly 5,000 lower than where I'm at.
Well, no, because they add the parking in, they add the laundry in, and they come up to the 525.
So if I add
So
on,
you're at 526, aren't you?
yes, they're very similar. So I add on the laundry income, and then I add on the parking revenue.
So
yes.
your number and their number is the
Very
same.
close, yeah.
Very close, within $300.
Very close, yes.
Okay. That's all I had.
Sorry, I misunderstood your question.
It's okay, sometimes I'm not very clear. That concludes that matter? Right? Moving on to the next one. 1090 Devonshire.
The next property has a file number 19-1562. The roll number for the property is 04007-000-100. Has an address of 1090 Devonshire Drive West. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020, reference date of April 1st, 2018. The assessed value for the subject property is $11,911,000. Has one building, 3 stories, with an actual year built of 2002. Has a zoning of residential multifamily, land area of 156,718 square feet, land area of 33,724 square feet, and a gross floor area of 101,173 square feet. On page 3, there are a couple of aerial photos for the subject property. On page 4 are the maps, one for the subject property and one for the comparable rents. And on page 5 are the rent comparables. They are ranging from $805 up to $1,456 average monthly rent per unit. On page 6, the income valuation workup. The subject property has 83 suites, a monthly rent of $1,084.31. Average monthly rent per suite, and that is a model-driven rent. There's a vacancy loss of 3% and an expense ratio of 43.15%, giving it a net operating income of $595,546. Using an overall capitalization rate of 5%, the capitalized value is $11,910,920. On page 10 to page 12 is where the 2017 income and expense information is located. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Questions?
Yes, just 2 really. The market value is again model driven in all points for this property.
That's correct. Yes.
And I guess I'll present that as rebuttal. That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed?
So this is a fairly new building, relative, compared to the other ones we were looking at.
That's correct. With the 2002 or actual year bill.
So, have there been any improvements into this building?
we're looking at the effective year built at 2002. I don't see any significant renovations that were done. Just basing it out on effective years built.
Okay, and what influenced you to give it 5% on the cap rate?
As mentioned earlier, could be the age, the size, location of the subject property.
The land plan ratio is 4.65.
Yes, that's correct.
That's a lot of extra land.
Usually for apartments, land to plan area is influenced by the zoning itself, how many units you're allowed to build on a certain piece of land. So basically, land to plan area, it may have a lot of extra land, but it all depends on the zoning too, what particular how many number of units you can build on that piece of land.
You're aware that the complex is adjacent to water?
Yes, based on the pictures on page 3.
Yeah.
And I believe this is a retention pond, if I'm not mistaken. It's not the river or creek or something that's flowing.
Would that be an amenity for this site? Like an attractive thing to have?
Good question.
Other than the geese and the dogs?
I was about to mention that.
You just nailed it.
I was about to mention that. Good. I mean, there's a view, right? I mean, if you look at it, if you're from the back, you're not just forced to see a road or nothing, just a piece of land. There's a water.
And there's no public walkway between them and the water, so
I don't see it.
So it almost feels like a private lake.
That's a good
That's where your
observation.
suite's located.
Exactly. That's another point too. It depends on where your suite is located. Yeah, that's a good observation, sir. Whether it's a good amenity or a bad amenity, and all depends on the person who wants to rent it.
And the location in the
Yes.
complex.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Robert?
I have no questions.
Thank you, sir.
Do we see revenue for the parking?
Yes.
Usually when there's garage parking, they have revenue on it, but just wondering why. Maybe I'm just not seeing it.
Other revenue, there's nothing in the income statement, sir.
Might be included in the rent.
Even on page 10, they don't include any parking revenue or don't indicate if it's gross, including parking. I would say none, based on the page 11.
So it would be included in the rent probably.
That's something that we can assume, because there's nothing, and there's parking, obviously.
It's actually got garages built on both sides, if I'm correct.
Looks like, yes, they're covered.
I'll get you to answer it after.
Okay.
Ryan doesn't. Okay, let's move on to your presentation.
So,
You can answer that too, what garages.
so there's actually a picture of it in my brief, I think, but it's covered parking. They're not garages, and it is included in the rent.
Okay.
So there is no additional revenue for the parking. But they're not enclosed garages that are heated or anything. It's just
One big lean-to.
surface cover to keep the snow off, essentially. And just with regard to the drainage pond in the back, it's kind of both, I would indicate. And yes, you have a field behind you and a lake, I guess, but on the other side, as mentioned, they generally draw an incredible number of noisy wildfowl. So it depends on your tolerance for getting woken up early, and I wouldn't want to go likely walking very close to that lake, I don't think, given other issues that they create. Anyway, moving on from that to the property itself. So 1090 Devonshire Drive West. This is a seniors non-profit cooperative housing facility, as shown on my page number 1. It's called Park City Meadows Housing Cooperative Limited. It's owned RMFS. Built in 2002. It has not been upgraded since that time. Sits on 3.6 acres, total of 83 units, and you have 12 one-bedroom units and 71 two-bedroom units in this facility. Again, if you look at page number 1 and the chart there, you can see the appeal history, for the subject property, going back through 2014. At the Board of Revision, so we had a reduction in 2014 to $6,683,000. 2016 it was reduced from $10,249,000 to $7.4 million roughly. And in 2018 rather, it was reduced from $10.5 million to just over $10 million. And we have appealed that decision to the municipal board and are awaiting scheduling on that. Our presentation, we can go through this. You can see the covered parking at the bottom of page number 2. So again, it is simply a roof over the property, over the cars rather. There is a significant amount of common area in the building, as you can see at the top of page 3. That's a common area for the residents. Again, it's built as cooperative housing. The units themselves are shown on pages 4 and 5. That's very representative of the finishes. They have not been updated. They're from 2002, generally in good condition. Nothing unusual there. With regard to cooperative housing, we have a bit of a description with regard to that on page number 6. Obviously, cooperative housing is designed for that communal feel, but also to provide lower cost housing in the marketplace, and that is reflected in the rents that are charged for this particular facility. Now, the site is shown on page number 7, backing onto the area there as shown, and the general aerial showing the location in the city is on page number 8. So it's in that area just off of Plessy, so essentially in the Transcona area, to the east of Lagimouche. Let's move on to the valuation itself. So at the top of page number 11, we have a property that was producing $583,800 using the existing rents. The rents that they had were very low, at $477 for 1 beds and $553 to $677 for the 2 beds. These rents are not truly representative of the marketplace for the subject property. So we did further research in order to determine an appropriate rent for the units in the building. We presented the CMHC stats as shown in the middle of page number 11. Subject property is in Transcona. You have averages of $816 for 1 beds and $920 for 2 beds in the Transcona area. To that, we've also added our own study at the top of page number 12, giving you some rental rates in the immediate area, with 1 beds ranging between $860 up to $1,129 for 1 building, generally in that $800 to $900, 9+ range, with 2 bedrooms being a low of 1,025, a number in that particular area up to a little over 1,295, which is a new facility. So looking at the subject property, the size of the units, etc., age of them, we felt that they are average in the marketplace. So we have applied market rents of $905 to the one-bedroom units and $1,093 for the two-bedroom units. Now that's the East Kildonan statistics. Certainly higher than Transcona, but we felt they were more appropriate for the subject. So this gives us a gross potential income of $1,061,556. To that, we've deducted 3% vacancy rate. Generally, vacancy in that particular area is a little higher, but we've deferred to 3%. The expense allowance for the subject property is shown at the bottom of page number 13. We've given you a 3-year history of the expenses and our stabilization of those for the 2018 valuation year. We've used actuals where appropriate and made changes where appropriate as well, but typically it's a 3-year average that you're looking at when there's some variability. So our expense allowance comes to $462,824. Page number 14 summarizes this. In addition, what I've done here is present the City of Winnipeg's 2018 valuation parameters as well. So somehow the model has changed dramatically and is now attributing another $130,000 in revenue to the property that it wasn't in the 2018 year, and there has been no changes to it. So I don't really see how the model can have changed that dramatically. In any case, that is the top line there. Our NOI based on this is $566,885. Again, we move on to capitalization rate. My comments regarding social and low-cost housing do remain the same. I'm not going to run through the text on that again. Suffice it to say you have residents in place under a certain rental scheme that would carry forward going forward. You have disposition issues regarding that. If you were to look to acquire this property versus a standard market apartment next door that was built at the same time in the same way with the same units, you would attribute a higher risk to acquiring this property on the basis that the rental scheme that you have in place could not simply be ignored and changed. Those tenants would have the right to carry forward under their existing tenancies. So there would be certainly a tail effect where you couldn't make any changes to the rental scheme for some time as those tenants remained in place. Our cap rate study remains the same as presented at the bottom. The capitalization rate that I've utilized for the property at 5.5%, well reflective of the top end of what we consider the range to be, is reflective of the newer nature of the building being built in 2002. It's still in good condition. It is in a decent area. It has the amenity of covered parking on the outside, etc. So we've applied a cap rate of 5.5%. Certainly, I don't see a cap any lower than that being attributable to the subject property based on the market information that we have. So the final market value comes to $10,307,000 based on these parameters as shown on page number 19. And I did have one comment with regard to the city's comps, and this again would be rebuttal, I guess. Comparable number 2, 45 Kildonan Green. This is a recently developed property by Homestead Group out of Winnipeg. Built in 2011, well constructed. They certainly do a good job. These properties are for seniors, but it's standard rental, 55 plus. They have ensuite washers and dryers, central air, storage, balconies. It's a significantly better property than the subject would drive higher rents. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Ryan?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair, on page 19. Yeah, I want to clarify 12 and 71 per month on market rent.
Which page are we looking at?
Page 19. I'm seeing 71 and 12 for one-bedroom units 12 and two-bedroom units 71. Is that the number of units?
And that's 83.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the number of units,
That's
not
correct.
not the rent per.
No.
Okay.
No.
It's 1066. Okay. And on page 6. There's a sentence that says government funds cover the difference between this payment and the co-op flow charge. So does that mean that the revenue collected does not include the revenue collected from the government? So it's a separate collection, right?
So the statement on page 6 is just a general explanation of cooperative housing.
Not particularly for the subject.
Not particularly for the subject. And again, the rental scheme that they have in place is below market, which we recognize, so we attributed greater rent to reflect what market would be.
And one last question, page 1, it says seniors nonprofit multifamily co-op housing. Is it 55 plus or 65 plus? Just want to clarify. I mean, it's not a big deal.
I don't recall specifically.
No. Okay.
It's got to be retired federal employee.
Okay, that's all the questions I have to check. Thank you.
Yes, back to the pond.
Okay.
You really like that pond, don't you?
Oh, I do.
The largest swimming pool I've ever seen.
Okay, who owns the pond property?
City.
The city does.
City, so they maintain it.
Yes.
Nick?
I would think so, yes, whatever maintenance is done
Yeah.
to them.
So that's not a cost for that unit. On your rebuttal on the homestead,
Yes.
the rent is high, but does the homestead operation not include the food that they get as
No.
part of the rent?
No, so there's a couple of different homestead properties there. Because
Because I'm not familiar with it does.
yeah, there's an assisted living facility which would have that aspect, but this is
not that.
strictly market rental.
All right.
This one.
I think that was it. Thank you.
Robert?
Just going back to page 6 when you were just giving a summary of cooperative housing. And there it says, some co-ops pay a reduced monthly year to their income and government funds cover the difference. If a situation like that arose, is that the money that would come from the government given to the individuals, or is it given to the company or to the co-op?
It would,
In other words, they pay it and then they get a check back?
no, it would never go to the individual themselves. It would, whatever the funding scheme is that they might be under, it would be given to the cooperative entity itself, not to the individual.
As far as this property is concerned, that doesn't concern us.
I'm just having a quick look here. Because our valuation doesn't take that into account, we treated it as standard market in our rent. I didn't have a detailed look at that, but I'm looking at the
Looking at
revenue
the
side.
income statement?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the revenue side, and they have their common area housing charges, $555,978, and then just some chargebacks and other interest things. So they don't appear to have additional funding there.
Okay, thank you.
They just provide low-cost housing.
But in low-cost housing, they don't pick up cable bill. You've got it showed as an expense of $30,000, which is usually picked up by the individual tenants in most of the cooperatives. Is it not?
Yes, generally in a co-op situation, it would be picked up by the tenant on their own. Now, in our valuation, we're attributing what we believe to be a full market rent to this because their rents were so low. So that.
But the full market rent places would also have the individuals paying for the cable.
No, it's a mix. Not always. It's.
How many of yours did and didn't then?
I cannot tell you because I don't have that figure.
It's an important number. It's a $30,000 hit on your revenue, on your expenditure side.
Right.
So it's important that we know where that $30,000 is being picked up.
So it is picked up by the organization itself. They're not paying for it on an individual basis, as there's no revenue stream showing that they're doing so. But that being said, again, on the income side, I've attributed full market rent to it. Is that higher than it should be? Perhaps. It's an overall balance, right?
But the city's using that model on that, and it's lower than what your total expense is. If you take that $30,000 off, you're at the model. You're actually less than the model.
On the expense side. So let's just flip to that then. So, yeah, we would be slightly under what the city would be at there. You're correct on that front. On the expense side, yes.
But do you think it's fair to allow something like that to ride if we don't know for sure? Seeing as most would probably be picked up, especially looking at the ones you use as your comparables to derive your rent. I would say probably all of those were included in this.
Some of them might even note it, actually, but actually I see this particular chart does
In their
not.
budget, it shows that they're treating that as an expense.
That's right. It shouldn't be.
It is an expense, and it is covered by the organization. If the panel sees it differently, certainly I understand that.
It might be a basic cable.
I can't tell you whether Netflix is
No jet
included
games.
or
No jet
or
games.
Hulu or
That's exactly
or
the problem.
Netflix.
But you hear where I'm coming from on that one, right?
I do
So
understand, yes.
so
I
that
guess
would-
my thought is just, have we accounted for that in applying the market rent on the other side?
But you're asking the same question. We don't know that, do we?
Well, because of the rent structure, it's the exercise of attributing what would be fair to it, so I leave that up to you.
And this is the federal co-op. It's under the federal act. It's not under the provincial act. So it's got different ways of getting the money back, which the provincial one doesn't, correct?
Correct.
They've got totally different mechanisms.
It is a different scheme, certainly.
That's a good way to put it, scheme.
Well, perhaps I should rephrase that, not in a nefarious way. Structure.
So you could ask the same questions. Do they pay their own electricity? Do they pay their own?
They don't have separate, they don't have
Not
separate.
separate things, no.
none
No,
of
they
that.
don't have separate meters for that.
New buildings are doing that now.
Yes. If it's a new structure, everything will be broken out.
Yep. Right down to the air conditioner. You pick it up. Anyway, seeing as this one's built thin, that wasn't.
Okay.
I guess I am now good with my
Okay.
question.
No more flying questions?
Yeah, come on.
What time is swimming classes?
Sometimes I get let me. We got 1, 2, 3. If we can't complete them by noon, we'll do one more and see where we're at, and we might take a short break for some lunch.
Okay.
We don't need anybody getting headaches. So we'll move on to 114 Yale Avenue. We have time to complete that by now. Looks like an end. When you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next one has a file number of 19-1556. The property has a roll number of 0900054200. It is located at 114 Yale Avenue East. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020, using the reference date of April 1st, 2018. The property is assessed in two ways. It has two classification, or liability, I should say. And the total assessed value is $6,515,000. The first assessed value is $143,000, which is assessed at 40E. The next one is assessed at $6,372,000, which is assessed at 40S. On same page, the number of buildings is 1. There's 8 stories, and actual year built for the subject property is 1990. Has a zoning of residential multifamily, a land area of 24,112 square feet, land area of 8,441 square feet, and a gross floor area of 74,926 square feet. On page 3 are aerial photos of the subject property. On page 4 are maps. The first one is the map of the subject property, and the second one is the map of the rent comparables. On page 5 are rent comparables. There are 3. They're all ranging from $805 up to $1,171 average monthly rent per unit. And on page 6 is the additional building value. That's about $143,000, which is assessed at 40E. And the 40S is the income, is assessed under income. It has 57 suites with monthly rent per suite of $974.40, which is a model-driven rent. Vacancy loss of 3%, an expense ratio of 50.72%, giving it a net operating income of $318,593. Using the capitalization rate of 5%, the capitalized value is $6,371,860 for the income side. Page 8 is the income valuation summary of both the cost, or it's the stream 1 and stream 2, which gives a total of $615,000. On page 11 to page 12 is where the 2017 income and expense information is located. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Further questions?
So page number 6, the 143,040 there, it's calling it additional building value. Do you know what that
Yeah, I
represents?
checked on this a long time ago. It just slipped out of my head. I'm just trying to recall it, and yeah, I couldn't recall it. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I couldn't recall it.
I want to be fair here, so it's not an additional building value, correct? And that there's not another building on site?
No, I believe it was assessed separately to give it a 40E. It's just
Totally
it's within the
different.
same building.
So it's
It's not a
I'll
detached
just-
structure or a separate building from the main building.
So I'll just answer my own question, I guess, if I can. It's a tunnel that runs from the St. Michael's Villa over to the St. Michael's Church. That is what that is representative of. Moving on to value itself, so the...
That's why it's exempt, is because it falls under the church.
Right. Well, it doesn't though, it falls into this one, not under the church. In any case, moving on to the market value itself, so I compared the 2018, first of all, this is all market, this is all model driven, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I saw a jump of from $556,000 in gross rental income up to $666,490 for 2020 over that 2 years, so $110,000 increase. Do you know what would cause the model to make such a dramatic increase in rent?
No, I don't have that information. I can't figure it out.
But there's been no changes to the building in terms of building permits or anything of that nature?
No, if I base it on effective year built, no, there's no change. So
Okay. Those, and then I see the cap rate has also dropped from 5.25% in 2018 to 5%. Is there anything in particular that has been would cause that?
It's just the information that we get caused the model to compress it by 125.
Okay. Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed?
So, this, the taxable school exemption, because it's a school?
No, it's not a school, it's an institutional. Just wasn't, yeah, I forgot what I found out about this, but yeah, I believe it's, no, I can't speak to why it's 40S, however, definitely not a school on that matter. So that's, I'm not sure why. I don't have the information with me.
Trevor might have it. Right?
Yes.
You don't have it right, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll wait for that answer. No further questions, thanks.
Rob?
Thank you, sir.
No questions.
Thank you.
I'm going to wait on your presentation, see if I catch it. Up to you.
Okay, thank you. So just with regard to that 40E section, St. Michael's Villa is constructed by, well, it's St. Michael's Villa Inc. is the ownership group. It's a nonprofit seniors housing rental entity developed by the church organization, St. Michael's, next door, and they built the multifamily with an underground connection so that the residents could go in the wintertime next door to church without having to go outside. Part of that is there is one room off of the tunnel that they have Sunday school that they run out of there. It's not a daycare. There's no revenue generation of any kind out of it, but that is what that represents. We haven't attributed additional building value to it. It simply is what it is. It's an unusual circumstance. Looking at the property itself, page number 114 Yale Avenue East, again, as described. St. Michael's Villa, Inc. is the owner. It's a non-profit entity. They've developed this seniors multifamily facility for housing seniors at a relatively cost-efficient level. The description, page number 1, you can see some details with regard to the property as well as the assessment appeal history at the Board of Revision. We had reduced amounts in 2012 of $2,961,000 for 2012. 2014, $3,237,000. 2016, $3.6 million. And 2018, we had a significant jump in that it was only slightly reduced to $4,566,000, which we've appealed to the municipal board. Now we're looking at 42.7% increase in value over that already appealed 2018 value up to $6,515,000. A jump of almost $2 million in value, 42.7%. That's well above what the market is indicating to us. The suite breakdown is shown on page number 1, 28 one-bedrooms, 29 two-bedrooms. Property was built in 1990. It is not deluxe. If you go into the photographs, you can see the somewhat institutional nature of it. The units are not large. There is a lot of common area as shown on page 3. The hallways are somewhat wider than what one might find typically to accommodate seniors' needs. And the finishes are shown in page numbers 4 and 5. And there, again, has been no renovation, so the kitchens look like page number 5 does, with the Euro cabinetry and the older flooring, etc., and carpet. The description, again, is on page 6. There is a games room, a small library, a small dining room with a kitchen for use by tenants. No meals are provided. There is an office, etc. So more common area than one would typically find in a normal market apartment. The site is shown on page number 7. Parking is fairly limited and is just off of the rear of the building there, as shown, outlined in red. And the overall location is shown on page number 8 in the Transcona area, where the red marker is indicating it is. So moving forward, the average rental rate for the property as scheduled was $749. This would probably fall below what the property would rent for on the market, in our opinion. It generated a rental income of $512,204 for the 2018 year, which increases to $533,000 with a rental subsidy, which is provided by, provided by MHRC. That allows the property to operate on a break-even level. We've looked at the property itself and compared it to the market. We feel it should probably get a little bit more rent than that. So we have attributed the Transcona averages of $816 for one beds and $920 for two beds, which brings it in at $594,336 on gross potential income. This is, of course, below the city's projection of $666,490. To this, we have added parking income of $10,189, as that's what they were achieving. And then, unusually, they have rooftop communication tower lease for this facility, which is ongoing. So if you were to acquire it, you would get that lease, so they do have that revenue. So we've included that in our rent. Certainly non-standard, and it brings the overall income up beyond what one would normally have, but it is present, so we are reflecting it. The expense side, we are deferring to the City of Winnipeg's 3% vacancy allowance. Vacancy in that area is higher. The expense allowance itself, we give you the 3-year stabilized history of the property. As shown, we've made adjustments where required, and we arrive at the stabilized expense amount of $348,119. If you flip to page number 14, this is summarized. Brings us down to an NOI of $261,869. Pardon me. Just looking at this page in general, you look at the city's projection for 2018 of $557,000, call it. We're seeing a $110,000 increase in revenue as projected. I do not see how the model would make an adjustment quite that dramatic. The actual rent is lower than what we're projecting for it. The rental that we've applied are market averages. Certainly the building is not above average, either in the size of the units, which are generally smaller, smaller than market, or the finishes, which date to 1990. So certainly the resultant NOI based on market average as well as the actual expenses for the building, which are only slightly higher than what's projected by the city's model, are fair. Looking at capitalization rate, again, we have a social housing project. We have the same influences regarding risk on purchase of a property such as this in comparison to a standard market apartment. Pardon me. In addition, I will point out my page number 18. If you look at the chart in the middle of the page, this is a study done by C.B. Richard Ellis. It's somewhat dated now, but what it is showing is the premium that is applied to seniors rental housing in the marketplace in Canada in comparison to standard market apartments of a high-rise nature. So it's not in particular what the cap rates are that are shown here. It's the delta between the cap rate that's applied to seniors housing versus standard market apartment housing that I'm indicating with that chart. So again, we have a non-profit entity. The rental charges that are in place and the leases would go forward on purchase. The rent would not dramatically increase from the $558,000, I think it is, that they're actually achieving to $666,000. It would be as it is. So there's certainly a premium that an astute investor would apply in looking at a purchase of a property of this nature compared to a standard market apartment. We see a flat line in cap rates. We really see no change between 16 and 18, or rather 18 cycle and 2020 cycle. So we've applied a cap rate of 5.75% for the subject property. This gives us a market value of $4 million. Just a moment.
$4,596,000.
$4,596,000, I believe. It's just. Pardon me. Was not adjusted. It is actually. I'm sorry. Our final market value actually is $4,554,000. There was a slight change made in the calculation, which did not carry forward to the rounded figure. So our final market value is $4,554,000 as shown on page number 19 in the calculations. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
That's what you in the calculation.
Yeah, in other words, if you take
Take the
this
other one.
261 and you take 575, it comes to
That's correct.
4554.
Yeah. Got it.
I apologize for that.
Questions?
Page 6, Mr. Chair.
Which page?
Page 6. The first sentence indicates life lease complex in 1990. Is it still life lease complex?
It's not actually a life lease complex. That is a typo.
Okay.
It is a non-profit seniors rental.
Okay. And it was mentioned that it's connected to a church.
Correct.
Are all the renters here members of the church or attendees at least?
That was the intent. No, I couldn't swear to you that they are, but it was built for people of that community. Yes.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Ed?
No questions.
Rob?
Yeah, I do. I'm still not quite sure what the $143,000 is for. Is that for the tunnel that you're talking about?
It is for the tunnel. Yes.
Assessor didn't seem to know.
But it's exempt.
Yeah.
No, nobody pays tax on it.
But it's still added to the.
It's added to the total amount, but it doesn't, it's exempt on tax.
Right, that's correct.
And the other one's exempt on school tax.
Okay, I have no other questions.
So your number there would, you'd also have to subtract that 100 and,
Well,
because you didn't break it down.
I didn't.
The
I
tunnel.
didn't attribute an additional value to the tunnel. If you want to add the 143,000, that's.
It shows up on every other one going all the way back. You showed that on your one sheet, on your page 1. Throughout the appeals, it was,
Oh, that was those were
16.
the decisions.
yeah, 16 it was there, right? 18 it was there.
16 it wasn't.
No, 16 it wasn't.
16 it wasn't, yeah.
So they brought it on in 18 for some reason.
Yes. So yes, I would deduct that from my overall value as the exempt portion.
Yeah.
In that there's really no additional value to it. It's simply an anomaly essentially.
We shouldn't subtract it then if you already had, your number said you didn't take it out but you didn't put it in. That was just your number.
Right.
So that's what you want your bottom line number to be. So it would be the other way. Correct?
I suppose so. I
Yeah.
encompassed it,
Not that it's
the entire
irrelevant.
property within one number, yes.
That's right. I just wanted to. We can break that. Okay, that's all, the only question I have on that one. Do you want to continue, or would you like to take a break? We've got 2 properties left, I believe.
Is it two? Olson?
Molson 115 and Molson 1395.
Oh, yes.
You guys take a break now? Is that okay with you? We'll take our break now. Back in half an hour.
Okay.
We've done one.
Yeah, we do.
So then I find my preference to one watch for.
Can that be
I,
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Okay, let's move on to 1115 Molson Street.
and the next
When you're
property.
ready.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 19-595. Has a roll number of 04007252-725. It is located at 1115 Molson Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020 using the reference date of April 1st, 2018. The assessed value for the subject property is $38,403,000. Has 3 buildings, 3 stories, an actual years built between 2006 to 2016. It is zoned as residential multifamily. The land area has 514,873 square feet, a planned area of 102,609 square feet, and a gross floor area of 294,911 square feet. On page 3, aerial photos of the subject property.
Are all 3 buildings together?
The 2 on the side that seem to be attached, and then there's
1105, 1105, 1125, is that all part of this whole complex?
yes, that's right. It's the entire
The entire complex.
complex.
Even
1,
though-
2, 3.
Yeah, because there's 3.
And on page 4 are maps. The first one is the map of the subject property, and the next one is the map for the comparable rents. On page 5 are rent comparables. They're ranging from $1,036 up to $1,469 average monthly rent per unit. On page 6 is the income valuation workup. The subject property has 286 suites with a monthly rent per suite of $1,010.40, which is model driven. It has a vacancy loss of 2.6%, an expense ratio of 43.50%, giving it a net operating income of $1,920,128. Using an overall capitalization rate of 5%, the capitalized value is $38,402,560. And on page 10 is the 2017 income and expense mailer. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Questions, Trevor?
So this is an assisted living facility, correct?
I'm not sure if it's assisted living. I wasn't able to go there.
Okay. The I guess I'll address the rent comparables in rebuttal when I do my section there. The cap rate of 5%, that's model driven along with the rest of the valuation?
Correct.
And is that strictly, well, I know there's a number of things that go into it, but largely would that be driven by the age of the development?
One of which is correct.
And would that take into account any additional risk factors that might be present in particular types of multifamily properties? Or is it just reflective of market apartments?
It's based on what's going on in the market, based on the sales that we gathered and the net operating income that we derive from a lot of properties, a lot of apartment properties.
Have there been any sales of assisted living facilities that you know of that would show a cap rate of 5%? Or rather, well, let me rephrase that the city knows of that would show a cap rate of 5%?
Particularly assisted living, I am not sure of that. I don't have that information.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Rob?
I have no questions.
Thank you.
Ed?
No questions at this time.
This is the information that they sent?
Yes, they sent it online.
That's it?
You didn't use any of these.
No,
I'm sorry, no, that's model.
Just model.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you take gross floor, under leasable area, you don't have a number. Why is that? For units or land area?
Which one, sir?
For the property itself, do you break down how this building is laid out in for rent? Or you just the number of units to rent out?
Sorry, on the rent? I didn't get the question.
Okay, so on your sheet, you've got 286 units at 1010, which comes up to the 3 million something. But you don't take into account the eating areas, the other areas in the building when you do this, or is that because it's included in the rent?
The rent is the rent per suite, so whatever is heating in the common areas, I think that's how the market is charging it too. I mean, they just charge by unit.
So you don't charge anything on common area?
No, I don't charge it. For rent, no.
Where do you capture any value in common area?
It's captured as a whole. In the market, I don't think they are renting out. They're putting value or putting rent on the common area. They're just putting on rent per suite, and I'm assuming that they are in capturing it in the rent per unit that they're charging their renters in terms of for the common areas.
So this is a senior's home. What is it? It's a assisted living.
Assisted living.
So they can go eat in the main area if they want, and they pay a percentage of fee towards their food, correct?
There's an overall charge, yes.
We don't have a special place to actually go with these types of buildings?
No, we see it as how much it's going for in terms of the market, monthly rent per suite. And I don't think we separate assisted living for that matter.
Okay. Well, what's your presentation?
I have one slight follow-up question, if that's all right. Just looking at the income and expense that was submitted, and these are kind of general questions. So as I understand it, the in apartment, the apartment model valuation, the income side is a gross figure, correct?
Correct.
And from that, they make the deductions of vacancy and the other expense items, correct?
In terms of the model, yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I'm reading here the city would allow for a deduction for marketing and advertising. Is that correct?
Which page?
Sorry, it's the income expense, yeah. And I'm just reading, not the amounts, but the line items themselves. So one of the items under general and administration would be marketing and advertising. That's an allowable expense, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and if there were leasing fees that were charged, those would also be permitted, is that correct?
Leasing fees. I'm not sure.
Realtor.
And if they were to have to paint the inside of a unit when a tenant leaves, call it a tenant improvement or something, would that be that would also be included as an expense, would it not, in a apartment valuation?
Painting?
Just the painting would be included?
Would that be under repair and maintenance? I think that should fall under repair and maintenance.
Okay. Or
Maintenance.
carpeting, etc. Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Benefits, yeah.
Sorry, on to mine now?
Yeah, because we're going to have some questions on this sheet for you. Go
You
ahead.
can ask me questions. Okay, that's fine.
After you present.
All right, 1115 Molson. So we are looking at nonprofit assisted living facility. So we're looking at seniors facility here. It, to my knowledge, is the largest one in the city at 287 suites. As shown on page number 1, we have 197 one-bedroom units and 92 bedroom units. Looking at that same chart, you can see the appeal history for the subject property. For 2016 and onwards, we did have it under appeal earlier than that as well. In 2016, it was reduced roughly $5 million down to $32,665,000. We've appealed this to the municipal board and we're awaiting scheduling. Same goes for the decision in 2018, which was reduced to a little over $34 million, and we've appealed that to the municipal board. So we're awaiting scheduling on both of those at this point in time. There's been no decision on those, but it's my understanding that those will be coming up next spring. So we're looking at an increase again for 2020 from the $34 million, which is under appeal, up to $38,403,000. Again, a significant jump. The property itself is owned by a non-profit entity, Concordia Wellness Projects, Inc. They are an organization that is associated with the hospital in that area, Concordia, and are designed to operate on a non-profit basis in running the assisted living center. Now, assisted living centers, independent living centers in general, are categorically different from standard market apartments. So the valuation of those is done in a fashion to reflect as best as possible what a reasonable net operating income would be based on projected rents, and making any adjustments to the expenses for the property in order to bring them down to real estate specific expenses in order to come out with a fair and representative net operating income. So the structure to start with is such that there are a number of amenities that the residents pay for, that being some level of care in some circumstances. There is certainly a meal program is a very significant amount of it, where I believe 2 meals per day are provided to the residents. There's a number of other number of other amenities that are present and are worked into the overall fee that a resident would pay. So the fee that they're paying is not a market rent. It's a rent plus it's an amount that encompasses their entire expense of staying at that facility. So the exercise then is to establish what fair market rent would be for the units that they have in facilities such as this. So let's look at the facility itself. As mentioned already, there's a significant amount of common area in facilities such as these. If we look at my page 9 in the description of the property, there is a commercial kitchen. Actually, I believe there's 2 kitchens. There's a very large communal dining area. There's a private dining area. There's administrative offices. And then there's some smaller common areas such as libraries, games rooms, private sitting areas in each of the floors in each of the buildings. So we're looking at 3 buildings in total, which you've probably seen an aerial of already. And so this common area amounts to a significant portion of the main floors. If you look at the city's gross floor area per unit of 1,031, that's inclusive of that common area. So these aren't really large suites. In fact, they're smaller than normal, and that's somewhat misleading in terms of what the size of the units is themselves when you take that into account. So further description of the units themselves is on page number 9. The important thing to note with regard to the units themselves is they are built out for seniors. So if you look at the bathrooms, they typically have some safety features regarding the tub and circulation space within the bathrooms for wheelchairs, etc. So kind of a non-standard fit out. The finishes themselves, while nice, are not luxurious. They have to withstand wheelchairs, and walkers, and things such as that. The kitchen build-out is, as you see at the bottom of page 5. That's probably one of the larger kitchen areas within these spaces. So that particular one has a kind of a 3/4 fridge as well as a range. They don't all have a range, I don't believe, in this particular facility. The intent is for the seniors to make use of the dining facilities and not do all of their cooking in their units, as there are some safety issues surrounding that, plus the social aspect of getting together is an important part of these particular properties. The suites themselves, the breakdown of them is shown on page number 9 in a chart at the bottom there, done by building. So you've got 3 buildings, and you can see the breakdown as far as the size of the units themselves and the overall unit count. So moving on, page number 10 gives you the site description. You can see the aerial there. It is 3 buildings, 287 units in total. And the actual property location is shown on page number 11, kind of adjacent to Route 59, Lajimoji there, adjacent to Concordia Hospital itself. Page 12. We get into a bit of a description regarding seniors' rental market. There's kind of 4 broad categories: 55 plus, independent living projects, assisted living projects, which this falls into, and then personal care projects. So we're at the 3rd level here, that being assisted living project. These facilities typically include services that are not normally included in apartments, such as meal service, housekeeping, and laundry. This is what we're looking at with regard to the subject property itself, plus a degree of care where needed in the assisted living category. That is a general description. There's a bit of a summary with regard to seniors living spaces as published by CMHC in terms of vacancy, as well as vacancy by amount paid, as you can see on page number 13. Now, assisted living and independent living facilities are a business essentially, and in order to arrive at a fair market value for the real estate, we have to strip out the business components. So on the income side, obviously we can't rely on their overall charges, as those are indicative of all the services that they get. So what we have done in our valuation, and what is commonly done by other agents before this board as well, is look at relatively recently constructed market apartments, canvass the market for those, do a breakdown by rent, by unit type, on a square foot basis to determine what is being paid per square foot by unit type for these, and note what the amenities for those are. So that's what you'll see on my page number 14 and summarized on page 15. So the projects that we're looking at here are relatively recent, generally we're looking at earliest 2003, with a lot of much more recent projects, 2012, 2013, 2014. And we're looking at what the rent per square foot by unit type is for those properties. And, the challenge there being the subject property has what one would consider substandard kitchens in terms of the build-out of them, the number of appliances and size and capacity, etc., as well as storage. And then the size of the units is generally smaller as well. So they're not directly comparable to brand new apartments, but this is the means that we've used to estimate a market rent for them. It's probably somewhat higher in my estimation than perhaps overall is appropriate, but there's no direct means of coming up with a number, so this is what we have done. The rental rate range, the average for one bedrooms is $1.49. The average for two beds is $1.52. And that's what we're looking at in the subject property. The range being $9.97 to $13.90 for the one beds, and $11.45 to $21.35 for the two beds. Looking at this and the subject property, we have assigned a rental rate of $1.45 per square foot for the subject property for one beds, and $1.40 for the two bedroom units, based on the information that we have presented there. And again, in looking at those, we have smaller units with less build out, and certainly not as high end as the majority of the comparables that are presented here. So looking at it, looking at the rent, our one bedroom rents based on $1.45 per square foot range from $850 to $1,131, and the two beds range from $1,176 to $1,260 per month. Moving on to page 16, We apply this to the actual units themselves. Feel free to go through the chart there. Based on those rental rates, it comes to a total potential rent of $3,538,721, and you can see how that's calculated. Again, probably slightly on the high side, but we are using that. The parking income has been included of a little over $30,000 for 2017, as well as the guest suite income. There is a guest suite. It does generate some rental revenue. We have included that in our analysis. There is also an antenna lease, which we've also included in our analysis. On the expense side, we've used a vacancy rate of 2.6% in our analysis. Operating expenses, this is a crucial part of the valuation. You can see we have a 3-year history ending actually at March 31, 2018, so right at the valuation date. Total expenses in those years range from $4.2 million to $6.1 million roughly. That again is inclusive of expenses used to operate the business. So we have to strip those expenses out, which is what we've done in doing our reconstruction. So going through it, the insurance is what it is. It steps up every year. We've estimated it at $85,000 for 2018, slightly under the year end of the prior one. Property management, we've used 5% of effective gross income, well under what is actually being charged for the facility. Professional fees, they have not counted for any in 2 of the years, and then they have a significant amount in 2018. We've estimated a total of $5,000 for that. Certainly there are professional fees to be paid on a facility of this size. That may be under the amount. Office supplies, we've estimated $2,000. Marketing and advertising, we've based it on the last year at $2,000. Hydro, 3-year average. Water and sewer, 3-year average. HVAC, 3-year average. Cable is included there as an expense. It's $130,000. 287 units, keep in mind. Waste and snow removal, it is present. We have a 3-year average. Security, we've estimated $1,000 based on the 2018 year. Repair and maintenance varied considerably for the property. We've estimated $1,000 per unit for the subject property in our valuation. Wages and benefits, obviously these figures take into account the overall operation of the property. We've used $100,000 as our amount for wages and benefits. That is probably on the light side. Certainly you'd have a couple of full-time staff, either 2 or 3 at the facility, so perhaps that could be slightly higher. Maintenance supplies are included there, and property taxes are what they are. So what's not included, we stripped out, it's shown at the bottom of the page, and these are all the expenses that are attributable to the business itself. So we have strictly real estate costs there. Moving on to the cap rate. As noted, independent living projects include a significant business component that makes comparison to normal market apartment, direct comparison, inappropriate. The business component reflects the investment on behalf of the owner in staffing and equipment. This characteristic of the property type would be expected to increase the risk inherent in the investment and should be reflected in a premium over cap rates for more conventional market apartments. In addition, it must be recognized that the marketplace for tenants in the independent living, assisted living universe is much smaller than for the general market apartment. that's confined to the higher age categories, but also individuals that have the ability to pay $2,500 plus per month for shelter. So there's a significant amount of additional risk that one would take on in buying an assisted living property. If you look at the middle of the page, I've got a chart that's taken from a magazine article in Canadian Property Valuation magazine. It's titled Valuation of Seniors Housing. And again, looking at this, you can see the difference or the delta between standard market apartments, being the dark green line, and the various levels of seniors housing, the green and the orange line, with care properties being full-time care facilities being the orange line. We would not be there. We would be below that, but assisted living is the third out of the 4 levels of care attributed in seniors level or seniors housing sphere. In addition to this, C.B. Richard Ellis did a Seniors Housing and Healthcare Canadian Cap Rate Survey in 2015. So we're going back a couple of years here, but what's important is what comes out of that, not the specific numbers. They covered the major Canadian markets in this survey, and in May of 2015, CBRE posed the following question to the most active seniors housing market participants in Canada, so that being owners and operators of these types of facilities. The question they asked was, what cap rate would you use to value a Class A independent and assisted living community in each of Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal markets, assuming the property was stabilized and it was a clean deal? And the results that they got in that survey were as follows. So keep in mind, these are the major markets of Canada. The minimum and maximum are shown there, ranging from 6 to 7.25, 6.5 up to 7.5 for the various markets. And your averages are 6.5 in Vancouver, 7 in Calgary, 6.84 in Toronto, and 7.13 in Montreal. Now, we're going back a couple of years. We don't see a lot of change, really. I don't believe in that. Our other market stats from Colliers and CBRE are also presented. I did not present we did actually. We did present our own capitalization rate study on page number 22, ranging from a low of 5.44% for premium property up to 6.65%, these all being renovated and or properties that did not need renovation. So that's the type of range that we're looking at. Again, purchase of an assisted living facility comes with a significantly increased risk over a standard market apartment. So despite the fact that the property is relatively new, the capitalization rate that you would see paid for a property such as this would be significantly higher in the marketplace. So the age is really not the deciding factor in what you're buying. Keep in mind, if you were to buy this and be converting it to a standard market apartment, you have small suite size, substandard kitchens, oddly laid out units in some cases with more circulation space than needed, substandard bathroom fit outs, etc. in comparison to modern market apartments. So that's the facility that you have that you would then need to rent on the marketplace if you're treating it as a normal market apartment. So page number 23 summarizes our entire valuation. We've applied a cap rate of 6.25% to our valuation. This is well under what is being attributed by the market participants in their survey. We're trying to be reflective of the real estate itself, so we've applied a cap rate of 6.25%. So capping our NOI gives us a final market value of $29,503,000 based on a cap rate of 6.25%. And again, keep in mind 6.25% is only a quarter point above the top end of what CBRE and Colliers are showing as the investment grade property range. In the addenda, we've included the same studies as well as border revision orders of standard market apartments, investment grade at 5.5%. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Brian?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Robert?
I guess I was just trying to get understanding when the wages and benefits are $2,500,000, $2,500,000, almost $3 million. And,
Yeah.
and the accountant here is saying that we just put in $100,000. Why is that?
No.
There must be something with these wages and benefits that aren't applicable to.
And that's absolutely the case. Is it's not applicable. So they're operating a full assisted living facility, right, which includes the kitchen staff and the care staff and all of those people that provide those services, right? So their wages and benefits are significantly higher than one would face for the real estate that we're looking at, not the business as a whole. So in order to apply that, or we've discounted what they apply as wages and benefits, and we've assigned $100,000. I'm probably on the light side there. Perhaps I should have another 50, but
For caretaker or something, or maybe.
yeah, with 287 units, it's probably a bit light, but I've erred on the side of caution.
Okay, and you try to be comparable in the rents so that it doesn't reflect a rent that would recover the food and all that other stuff that would be part of it.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Ed?
On the R&M, that's renovations and
Repair and maintenance,
yeah. Can you give me a sense for what the turnover rate is in a place like
this? It varies, of course. It's a higher level of care, so you have people that are needing to move on to greater, the final levels of care, like nursing home, etc. So you have residents that need to move out for those reasons. They often can't wait till the end of the month. They need to move when their space is available, so they will leave. You obviously have people that unfortunately pass away, etc., which creates a vacancy as well. I don't have a specific number, but there is built-in vacancy into the units.
But as a result of the high turnover for a place like this, the maintenance and repair of these units for the new person coming in is much more increased, isn't it?
It certainly can be, yes.
So that your estimate of $1,000 per unit might actually be low.
It might be a bit light as well. And again, I was trying to be conservative. I know that they have to do a lot more painting than normal, given wheelchairs and things like that. They do have to take care of issues like that on a regular basis with rough bars, etc.
And some people might be moving from a two-bedroom to a one-bedroom as a result
Correct.
of the
Yeah.
death of a partner or something like that.
That's correct, yes. So
Now also the assisted care, I imagine some of the very specific care that's needed for individuals would be covered through our health programs and not through the rent at all. like if you have home care coming in for 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 individuals, that's something that's not reflected in the rent.
Yes, I imagine you're right there, and I didn't really check into that as we're trying to estimate the, I've discounted what they actually pay and looked at just the real estate. But I follow what you're saying, certainly.
Thank you.
So your rents, your gross income is a couple hundred, well, $100 and somewhat thousand more than the city was, wasn't it?
Let me get to our page here.
Yeah.
It is a little higher, yes.
Yeah.
So
The biggest difference is on your cap rate and your expense allowance.
that's correct.
So your expense allowance, you explained already why it's higher than a normal building. And the cap rate, you've gone into it. The 6.25, I didn't really capture that on that sheet. Did you say it was the second green line
If
on the
you-
national cap trends?
Well, if we look at page 19 there,
Yeah.
so there's nothing that is specific to independent living on here, unfortunately, but what you see there is standard market apartment high-rise being the lower green line.
Yeah.
And these are national cap rate trends, so it's really not the number, it's the spread.
Yeah.
The lighter green line is seniors housing A, which they didn't specifically define, but I believe would be your 55 plus kind of a rental. And perhaps some assisted independent, maybe more independent living, and then care facilities being the upper orange line. So I think those would be your nursing home type facilities. So it doesn't specifically place where the assisted living would be, but it would be above the standard market caps.
What you're doing here when you're crunching these numbers, you're basically turning it into a hotel.
Well,
In a sense, is that not the way we would do a hotel, is what you're doing here?
similarly, yes, in that we need to strip out those components to look at the real estate on itself, because that's the only thing that's accessible. So in a sense, it is a similar exercise, yes. We don't have RevPAR, but
Property management administration, that's part of your expenses. That was almost $223,000.
yes.
Would not part of that be going towards the administration of the other sections that we've already taken out? As we're breaking it apart. Part of that would have been towards the food services, not directly towards the rental property.
Yes, you're correct. And so in looking at that, so you've got the 3-year history there with the last year being.
What page are you on now?
This is on page 18.
Yeah, I was going to what they were actually.
Oh, okay.
So it's used 76.
So on page 18, you can see we present the history, then we make any adjustment that's required. So
Yeah.
we've used 5% of effective gross income rather than the actual, so we're not using the 223.
You're using 176,000.
Based on 5% of the projected EGI.
Yeah, but why was that 1 year, 2016? They've been slowly coming down. They're 222 now. They were at 312. $90,000 less.
It has dropped, yes, but again, that's inclusive of administration for the whole facility, as you noted. So we've stripped that out and applied 5% as the standard market.
And what was the 5%?
176,000,
That's 5% of what?
the effective gross income,
It's 5%. Okay.
which is a standard market.
Well, that's what we used to have until the city took it out, right? That management 5%.
Well, That is an interesting discussion, yes.
Have we got enough time to discuss that?
Let's not go there.
No, we're not, let's not go there today. I'm just trying to capture all the G. So you use the 5 instead of using the actuals. Which is,
And I made estimates where appropriate. I mean, there were a couple of years where they they didn't have anything noted for a number of the categories, and I've made some projections for those. Professional fees have reduced significantly. They might be on the low side. Some office supplies and marketing, nominal security amounts.
that's good, I got them all. Thank you very much. Move on to the next one.
I got 10 minutes to go.
Oh, go put your property in.
Mine?
We're gonna take another break, guys.
Okay, I'll be back.
Hit the switch on my, sorry.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll put it in 2 hours.
Yeah. Anyway, let's do the last one, shall we? 1395 Molson. When you're ready, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last property in the docket has a file number 19-1562. It has a roll number of 04007-001-00. It's located at 1395 Molson Street. We're dealing with the roll year of 2020 using reference date of April 1st, 2018. The assessed value is $5,286,000. Has one building, 3 stories, with an actual year built of 2004. Zoning on this is residential multifamily. It has a land area of 68,096 square feet, a planned area of 15,613 square feet, and a gross floor area of 46,839 square feet. On page 3 are the aerial photos of the subject property. And on page 4 are maps. The first one is map of the subject property, and the second one is of the comparable rents. On page 5 are the comparable rents. There are 3. They're all ranging from $1,192 up to $1,513 average monthly rent per unit. On page 6, the income valuation workup. The subject property has 32 suites with a monthly rent per suite of $1,157.72, which is derived from the model. It has a vacancy loss of 2.6%, an expense ratio of 38.96%, giving it a net operating income of $264,306. Using the overall capitalization rate of 5%, the capitalized value is $5,286,120. And on page 10 to page 11, we have the 2017 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Question, Terry?
Yes, just briefly. I was looking at the. No, I can't do it that way. Again, all model driven.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Have there been any major shifts in the marketplace that would cause a significant change to the model?
As per our data and the modeling, it compressed, but I mean, that's from our side. That's from our model.
Okay. You're speaking specifically about cap rate? Or?
Cap rate, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed?
More questions?
Robert?
No questions.
And I got no questions. Let's move on to your...
All right. 1395 Molson. Pardon me. This is a seniors non-profit life lease property. The suite count is shown on my chart on page number 1, as well as a bit of history of the property. So we have 2 one-bedroom units and 29 two-bedroom units for a total of 31 units. Built in 2004, You can see the appeal history of the property, 2016, reduced from 4.6 million roughly to 4.1 million. This is under appeal at the municipal board. As is 2018, when it was reduced from 4,431,000 to 4,295,000. This is also under appeal at the municipal board, and we're awaiting those to get scheduled. We now have a jump from 4,295,000 to 5,286,000, roughly $1 million in 1 year on a little over a $4 million property. Again, not reflective of market value increases that we're seeing in the marketplace. Looking at the subject property itself, we have some exterior photos. As you can see, the property was built in 2004. It's stucco finish on the outside. It does have some underground parking as shown. It is life lease facility, so there is some degree of common area in the property itself, as you can see on the top of page number 4. The finishes remain the same as they were in 2004, fairly basic in nature, nothing deluxe about these particular accommodations. Page number 7 has further description of the apartment property itself. Again, 55 plus life lease facility operated on a non-profit basis. The description is there for you. And the issues discussed are shown on that particular page. Site itself is shown on page number 8, and the location is shown on page number 9. So it's called Barron Estates and is located just to the east of Lagimodier Boulevard, south of Springfield and Chief Pegwas Drive intersection, trail rather. The description of the property location is shown on page number 9. So moving on to the valuation itself, property rights appraised. So looking at page number 10, just a description of the standard fee simple estate ownership by the Appraisal Institute of Canada is the greatest estate that an owner other than the Crown can have in land. It's held in perpetuity, carrying with it the right to sell, lease, or give it away, and is subject only to restrictions held by the Crown, i.e. taxation, expropriation, police power, and as cheat. Leasehold estate, as defined by the Appraisal Institute of Canada, is an interest in land for a definite period of time, a week, a year, 100 years, or even more. The lessor or landlord grants the leasehold estate to a lessee or tenant, usually for a sum of money. The lessee has the right to exclusive possession of the property for the term of the lease. So in a life lease situation such as this, you have tenants that have the right to occupy their unit for the term of their life, and they have an interest in the property in that manner. They have a leasehold interest through their lease. They do not have the right to sell that interest, and on termination of the lease, they receive back the same amount as their initial fee invested in the property without any additional interest. The nonprofit ownership also does not benefit from a sale of a unit, as that's not what their mandate is. They're simply there to provide lower cost accommodation to seniors in this fashion. So there is no profit. There's always has been discussion in the past of the sale of these type of units. That's not happening here. Yes.
In regards to, say, a couple has a life lease, and one of the spouses died, is that person able to stay on until the second one dies?
Yeah, as long as they're on the lease, yes. Okay. So moving on to valuation itself, the actual rental charge in total for the building at the end of 2017 was $480,395. This amounts to $1,251 per month per suite. We have checked this against the marketplace. It is probably slightly on the high side. However, there is the units are perhaps slightly larger than an average unit is. So we have used the actual $1,251 per month per suite as reflective of market rent for the subject. On the expense side, we've used the 2.6% vacancy, and our expense stabilization is at the bottom of page 10. I would again indicate we use dominantly 3-year averages where it makes sense, where there's no particular trend. We've used the actuals where indicated, where they're stepping up, etc. And we've used property management amount of 5% of effective gross income, which is a slight reduction from the actual property management charge. The taxes are the actuals, etc. So our overall expense allowance of $250,060 is based on the actuals and appropriate reductions or increases where shown on the expenses. Page number 14 summarizes this. And I would draw your attention to page 14. So what I've presented here is our analysis on the left-hand side, coming down to an NOI of $217,000 based on the actuals and the actual expenses at $250,000. The city's column in the middle is the 2020 analysis by the city, and the right-hand column is the 2018 one. So you can see the city has a slight increase in revenue in their projection for 2020, understandable, similar vacancy, and then we have an increase in the, or rather a decrease in the expense allowance from 48,000, or rather 48% down to 39% roughly, which in looking at it amounts to a $37,000 decrease in expenses roughly in the city model. I don't see any particular thing in the marketplace that would indicate a drastic change such as that, and of course it's significantly lower than what the actual expenses for the property are. So that particular reduction drives a significantly higher net operating income, which I don't think is supported by the market. Moving on to cap rate, you've heard our discussion with regard to this. We've not applied any particular premium to the property in arriving at our market value. We've applied the 5.5% cap rate as being representative of your better class of rental property. If you look at the addenda, you'll see the decisions on Summerland at 77 University Crescent and similar properties. We've applied 5.5% as being reflective of the subject. In reality, it probably could be slightly higher given the issues that you face in buying a life lease property, but it has underground parking and the units are not small, etc. So we're being fair at 5.5 gives us a final market value of $3,961,000. Happy to answer your questions.
Ryan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Robert?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead. Ryan, he's coming with a question with you.
When you prepared the statement here, and then I see expenses of $38.96, where do you get that percentage?
That's as mentioned earlier, it was a model-driven percentage.
And how does the model do that when the model maybe in the previous assessment used a different percentage?
It's basically getting all of the market information. All expenses from different departments, different types.
So in this, would you put personal care and this type of building in a separate category, or would it all be just into apartment blocks?
No, I don't know, and I don't have that information. If there's a delineation or a separation between personal care home or personal apartment or type Bs, co-op.
You've never looked into that?
No, I don't have that information. No.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Ed?
Just one question. With regards to these appeals to the municipal board, can I assume that if and when the appeal gets sent there, that they look at these at the same time?
No, they do them by year. Now,
Okay.
we can look at them at the same time with the city with regard to settling anything, but the municipal board goes by year. They may like you to deal with both at the same time on occasion.
But it need not be.
It need not be, no.
All right, thanks. That's all I have.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You guys have a great day.
Yes, you do.
Okay, shut your camera off and the sound off. Ed, you and I are going to do the first one.